Good evening all. First up, I wish to acknowledge the excuse me while I untangle my tongue. I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the ancient and sacred lands upon which we are meeting, the lands of the Ngunnawal people. We wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contributions they make to the life of this city and this region. Also, I'll acknowledge and welcome any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be attending tonight. Welcome everybody. So nice to see you all. Thank you. Fortunately, we are not braving the chills of winter, and there was some daylight out there. It's disappeared. However, at least we got here in daylight. Okay, now we have come on, behave yourself, computer. It doesn't want to behave itself, people. We actually have replacement presenters tonight because John Faint has not been able to make it. And he's here now. Sorry.
I was always coming.
My apologies. Who told me he wasn't coming?
It's Sam's.
Sam's. I'm embarrassed, John.
That's fine.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You have a presentation, and there are a couple of people here somewhere who I haven't met. Hi from Icon Water, who will then follow on to Lisa and Bronwyn. Hi Bronwyn. Hi Lisa. Welcome. And without further ado, let's get stuck into it. I believe I have here, and I've got to do something to make this a presentation.
Keep going a little bit further over.
A little bit further. Keep going over. Keep going. What, that one?
That one.
Thanks, mate. And if I give you the nod, you just...
Yeah. Look, and I'll watch carefully.
My apologies for the heading on the second line there. It's a bit of a problem when you take a presentation you've done somewhere else and just change some of the titles in this respect. So I'm going to be talking about water in the ACT. It's National Water Week this week. And we've got quite a number of events happening in the ACT to mark Water Week, which is run nationally by the Australian Water Association, the Water Professionals Organisation. And I come to talk to you about this from the area of the catchment management and water policy in the ACT government, in the Environment Planning and Sustainable Development Directorate. I've been in that area about 10 or so years, working on all sorts of water-related matters. And before that, I was in natural resource management, and before that, heritage. And that's about when the ACT government started. I just to fully give my water credentials, I was born in the Murrumbidgee catchment, and the last 150 years of our generations of ancestors have also been born in the Murrumbidgee catchment. So local to home, I suppose, this is the Murrumbidgee catchment. So we just give the next slide.
Sure.
I thought I'd just give you a bit of a step through and how water works in our region. When I start with the region, I'll start with the Murray-Darling Basin, which isn't really a state or a territory boundary. It's a water boundary, and it reflects that rather remarkable basin of drainage of catchments which all drain together into the inland of Australia and end up flowing out of Australia really at the mouth of the Murray. So just go to the next slide. So the ACT, stuck down here in Canberra, of course, Canberra is the biggest metropolitan centre, the biggest human place in the Murray-Darling Basin, and it's predominated by agricultural production, and in many of those catchments particularly, well, right along, there's a lot of irrigation. So whilst we have the most people, the biggest user of water, of course, in the Murray-Darling Basin is agriculture. And So that basin covers Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, the ACT and South Australia. And it's obviously if you're in South Australia, you receive everyone's effluent, everyone's water, all ends up going down to Adelaide. So I guess we need to be good catchment citizens, and you can start at that level and work your way down. And it's quite vital to our economy, to our food production, to the well-being of everyone. And we sit prettily at the top of the catchment, right up here in the Upper Murrumbidgee catchment. And the biggest dam, of course, near us is that we all feed into is the Burrinjuck Dam, we're Jasper, or thereabouts. And of course above us we have the mighty Snowy Mountain Scheme, which takes some of the water that would normally go down the Murrumbidgee and shifts it west and takes it out towards the irrigation areas through Glowering, etc. We've been pretty good over the last 100 years or so in managing and manipulating water in this big basin to increase the agricultural production of the area. Just go to the next one. So in terms of our responsibilities in this area, we have to prepare an ACT water resource plan. We're one of the first areas in the ACT in New South Wales to actually be preparing one of these, although Murrumbidgee River catchment is coming along behind us. And it's really how we manage our surface and groundwater, environmental watering, I'll just explain in a minute, water quality and salinity, how we handle risks, and I'll talk a little bit about one of those, and how we manage cultural values in water, particularly those relating to Indigenous values. So we'll just go to the next one. So the way we regulate water use, of course, is we come to agreement about how much water we can take out of the system for particular uses, how much we can divert for our use. And so you can see that 450 gigalitres per year, gigalitres is a big amount of water, I won't go into it, but it's a fair bit. And we've got that sort of allocation. And I guess the message, the take-home message is, over the next, I don't know, foreseeable future, that allocation, that limit, is not going to change. We're going to have to live within our means in that respect, or else we have to buy water from other places. But at the moment, we're only using half, roughly, of what we're allocated. So we're also one of the fastest growing parts of New South Wales as a region. So water's a challenge for us. We've done some wonderful things to help with that as a result of the last drought, to make us more water resilient, if you might say. A larger Cotter Dam, we can divert water from other places, from rivers into our storages and the like. Those are other things. They provide us with further insurance and better use of our water. We can move water around our system better and that sort of thing. The ICON people can talk more about that if they want. But that was the message around that. And also at this high level, through the Murray-Darling Basin Agreement and using the environmental water holder and the water markets, we can trade that allocation if we wish. And recently we just come to an agreement to negotiate with New South Wales about water trading arrangements. So we can realise the value in a temporary way, as depending on how much water we think we're going to use, we can then sell the rights to that temporary allocation, temporarily sell the rights to that allocation further downstream for users and recoup some of that value in money. So the other thing, and that's what I've just referred to in that second part of our interstate water trading. So the message on that is we're using about half the water we're allowed to use at the moment, but we're continuing to grow as a community. But we're still pretty efficient, really. We've done a lot in the last 10, 15 years. So next slide. So we move down to the region. The ACT border doesn't mean much. Well, that actually does mean something in some parts of the ACT. It's actually the catchment boundary. But originally they were looking at the ACT being two ACT-like teardrop shapes, one which picked up the Molonglo and Queanbeyan rivers and as a catchment, as well as the Cotter River and the like, so that we would have, but New South Wales government didn't like that, so we get the shape of the ACT that is now. But it still doesn't reflect how we might manage resources in that area. And so we've been doing a lot of work at the ACT and region level to work together. And so we go to the next slide. So we've set up an ACT and Region Catchment Management Coordination Group. We haven't been able to come up with any shorter term for it, but it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a statutory body under our Water Resources Act to work cross-border, brokering better relationships, better arrangements between ourselves, our local council colleagues in the region, state government, etc. And it's to try and address these issues about regional population growth. If you step outside the ACT and look at rural residential New South Wales, it's pretty impressive the amount of development that's happening. The effects of climate change and in many respects a drying climate for us, and to get better cross-border coordination in a lot of areas, and bringing together governments, community and industry. And some of those things that we've been doing, and I'll mention briefly at the end, is a joint stormwater education program, looking at future sewage treatment needs for the region, and illegal dumping of soil and other contaminants in the region. They're just a few examples of things that have recently been brought in under that umbrella. But for instance, on that joint stormwater education project that I work on, it's refreshing to work from Yass to Cooma and Queanbeyan as a whole region and community, rather than just in the artificial boundaries of what the ACT is. There's so much interchange in the economy and people between our immediate region and the ACT. It makes sense to work at that scale and lots of things we do, particularly in the environment and water. Next one. So we move down to the ACT. We have the ACT Water Strategy, which is the government's, and the next one, mate? Which is the government's water strategy, takes us out to 2044, with 5-year implementation plans. And it's basically 3 pillars to that strategy. We're going to have healthy catchments, a sustainable water supply and an engaged community. So we have those three things in place. We think we've got the game pretty well sorted, but they're challenging to do that, of course, because of the growth and the way in which people live in their catchments. But this strategy, we've just done a progress report on implementing in the first period that it's been out. So it's only been out a little while. We keep track on this, and within government we have both a senior executives water group and a directors general water group, and it's one of those areas within government where we do seem to have reasonably good coordination between directorates. Icon Water's involved in that. When we talk about water, both at the most senior level and then at the operational level, and that sort of seems to work quite well when then we weave into that regional body as well. Just trying to give you a picture of how everything sort of fits together in terms of governing this precious resource that we have. So this thing sets out strategic directions. It's on our website. You can have a look at it there, and the progress report will be posted there shortly. So just go over to the next one. So when we come down to working at in ACT subcatchments, where we are at the moment, we're within the Molonglo catchment groups area, and we have 3 catchment groups that are community-based catchments groups that operate across the ACT and region. In Ginninderra and Belconnen, we have the Ginninderra catchment group. Southern ACT catchment group is the Woden, Tuggeranong Valley down through to Madgee, and Molonglo catchment group covers all of inner north and south Molonglo, and right down past Queanbeyan and further upstream. Those sorts of groups provide an umbrella for smaller groups that work in the community, whether they be park care groups, urban land care groups, urban sustainability groups and the like, that they can work under the aegis of a catchment group. And in our directorate, we've been working with the Ginninderra and Southern ACT catchment groups on new strategies for those groups that look at them becoming more self-reliant and spreading their funding base, and looking at where they can make the best impact in terms of their work in both doing direct projects on the ground to improve our environment, and also engaging the community in understanding better about water. Because it's at this level when we start to see where you individually sit in terms of water in the landscape. And work that we did recently, surveying the community about what you understand about water in this part of the world, it was a bit disappointing in some ways that the community is not particularly literate about water and where water goes. A lot of you last, a lot across the generations, we don't have very, people understand the lakes, Lake Burley Griffin, Lake Tuggeranong. The Murrumbidgee River sort of slips past, you know, you wouldn't even know it was there if you didn't sort of go over that way, because it's incised. Most people, a lot of people don't necessarily interact with it. So understanding the connectivity of our system, what catchment you're in, where the water goes in this area, and hence the activities you might do on your property or whatever, what impact they have where, are some things that we found that was very low levels of understanding of that in the community. So working with our community organisations like our community catchment groups and like, we're trying to work on how we can improve that and so people can better understand the implications. Just an example, the last couple of weeks, I know we're in a different part of the world, but Lake Tuggeranong was closed to swimming. It had its first blue-green algal bloom of the season, and that was very early. The climatic conditions probably contributed to that, but generally you could say we have to be better at managing the input of nutrients and things into our lakes to stop those sort of events happening. And when they happen in Lake Burley Griffin, they have significant effects on the economy, and a lot of events that are on the lake can't happen, etc. And then there's the amenity too of ammonia type smells that come off blue-green algae. I mean, it's just the system doing its own natural thing to balance itself. Everything wants to get back to balance, so it has to have a bloom of algae which consumes nutrients and change them into other things. So it's nature doing its thing, but it's not very pleasant in an urban environment that happens. So we moved out. I just want to talk about now the suburban and block site scale. And in the territory plan, if you go to the next slide, we have the waterways water sensitive code, water sensitive urban design code. And I guess this is something that's been in place now for about 12, 13 years. And it's a way of introducing into the planning system requirements that for developments that are large enough, it doesn't apply in the same way to all developments, that there are standards around how water will be treated on that block and released from that block. It also deals with water quantity, because localised flooding becomes an issue as we become a more urbanly intensified city. And I'll talk briefly about that in a minute. And it also deals with water use efficiency, which we seem to be pretty good at the moment, by and large. I took part in doing a review of that code recently, 2014. We finished that work, and we're now writing. We've now written a new code and guideline, practice guideline. So any developments in Canberra that now are over 2,000 square metres in size, the code applies, and there are certain standards. Because obviously, the more concrete you put on the surface, the more runoff you have. So you have to manage that runoff so that you don't have flows of peaks of localised flooding, and our stormwater system can't cope with it. And so there's requirements about detaining water, and also there are requirements about retaining water in rainwater tanks and the like. And also including in your property in those developments features that help filter the water as it comes, because as soon as the rainwater becomes stormwater, as soon as the rainwater hits the ground, it becomes stormwater, and then it has the potential to pick up nutrients or silts or the like and wash those into our waterways. And it's the combined effect of many thousands of single events that end up in our waterways. They're like a sort of a filter in our system. We help with in that way in looking at master planning in areas, and now doing catchment strategies, land management plans, and stormwater management and reuse. And I guess these are all elements of what we might call the HCT moving to becoming a water sensitive city. And we think all these things sort of link together. We're not the Sustainable Development Directorate for nothing, especially trying to look at the linkages. Because if you think about adaptation to climate change, having a moister, greener city is a way of building resilience to heat island effects and the like. So at the same time, that same moister, greener city is also doing a better job at filtering water and protecting our waterways. So you get multiple benefits from the same actions, as well as better amenity. And it's clear that and the other challenge with water-sensitive urban design, and the most obvious evidence of it is the many ponds and wetlands that you see around our community now. When I first started doing this work in looking at these, and this Urban Ponds and Wetlands Management Plan, in 2000 there were 11 ponds. There's now over 600 in the ACT. So that's also a big management challenge for the territory, Transport Canberra and City Services. But they're the treatment devices that exist right through the catchment to filter our water as it's going to our major waterways. I think they've got great amenity value, but in a lot of areas where people now live, you don't have much private space. And so you use urban open space, often beside ponds and wetlands, as your recreational space. And that's definitely the case as Canberra gets more consolidated and backyards get smaller. Which again puts challenges on how we maintain those areas for everyone and who pays for that. So they're things which we're looking at in terms of priorities. I think you go to the next slide and the next one. Thanks. I think I've skipped through and dealt with most of those things. I'll just deal with the flooding one. With the acceptance that our rainfall patterns and the like are changing as climates change, we have done detailed flood studies for riverine flooding across the whole of the ACT, and that information is going to be released shortly. We're looking at funding bids now to deal with where urban infrastructure needs to be changed to alleviate pressure points. So I say we're where you've got a stormwater drain crossing the road and you've got an impression that there's a narrowing there. Often that's a spot where water can back up and you don't want it to flood into people's yards and that sort of thing. So there's models have been done which show there's some different scenarios around that. So we know where those pressure points are, but it's based on what we assume to be the rainfall pattern into the future rather than what it was. And that's tended to be we'll have more intense summer storms, etc. And less rain in the autumn, those sort of things. So, those nice all day it's going to rain sort of days, we're going to put less of those. We're going to have a lot more short-term events in the future. Thanks. I'll just, to finish up, as most of you probably realise, it's really challenging to make people aware, educate people and change people's behaviour around things that we do. We're really good with seatbelts, we're really good with some things. We try to be good with smoking, but awareness of our waterways and how we can keep them healthy is a challenging area to move in. It's not for many people a life or death situation, and so we rely often on people's civic attitude, I suppose, and pressuring that. We rely on convincing young people, I guess, to mould their ideas early on. But we have a H2OK, Keeping Our Waterways Healthy campaign, and Kate came and spoke to you about this earlier in the year, so I'm not going to go over it in great detail, but other than to say, it's moving along quite well. Simple things that we're using, and I'll be interested in feedback about things you might think might be useful as well. We've got these stencils, and you'll see actually there's some out here on the drain covers we've done down at shops. We're doing every shopping centre in Canberra and the region, where people are, basically with just a subtle reminder that only rain should go down the stormwater drain, or this water from this sump goes to this water body, river or lake or whatever. And so we're putting those across every local shopping centre and district shopping centre in the ACT. We've got about a third done already. We've done it all in North and South Canberra. There's only basically 2 of us in this managing this program, so some days I'm busy doing policy and other days I've got the high-vis yellow on and spray can and out on the street. So we do both things, do all those sorts of things, which is good because that means you're directly engaging with people. Regardless of what you say, people come up and say, what are you doing? Well, like, you should know. Yeah, okay, we'll talk to you about it. So, so it is a way of directly engaging, and we also let the shops know, put our information there and the like. So that's just one of the aspects of it. And the other one that is an update, we're establishing across the territory, and we'd like to do more if we could get further funding, but what we've got is very low-key demonstration sites in people's gardens, showing what you can do in your property. And they don't have to be all very fancy gardens. They can be ones where people have just got a new block and they're confronted with, well, what do I do? How can you make the best use of the water on your block, really? Because that equation, if you can make the best use of the water on your block, helps our waterways. The more you slow it down and use it, the better it is for our waterways. If you just let it rush off, pick up nutrients as it goes, that's the worst thing we can do. So, more you can do to create infiltration on your blocks, the more you can use things like wicking bed gardens, use your leaves, which were a problem, obviously, if they're washing our waterways in great amounts. Use your leaves in the street for mulch and how to do that properly. So we've got 15 of these demonstration sites that we've funded, small grants of 3,000 for the urban blocks and rural residential in the region 7,500. And we're working with Open Gardens Canberra, which is taken over. There used to be an Open Gardens organisation in the ACT, but it closed, and this one was taken over recently, to open those up to people to have a look. So the best way, to be convinced about something is if you see it in reality. And the other thing that we're doing with them is, where they'd like us, we'll organise a workshop. And so if you're interested in knowing how to make a wicking bed garden for your veggies, you can come along and help make one. That's a great way to pass on the knowledge as well. They're not all small scale. Some about setting up a riffle and pond system in a creek line in a rural residential property. Interesting to have a look at one as it's being done. You're right. But we purposely tried to bracket a range of different settings that people might really confront, and I hope it'll be interesting and successful. And the third bit, just to finish off, is we know erosion and sediment control in building construction is an issue. It's a difficult area, and it needs good compliance. It needs good, people to do the right thing. There are standards around putting in the right erosion and sediment control, but we still see silt and mud going down drain circulating. So we're working with the Master Builders Association in the region on a range of different things to help promote best practice in this area, and there's certainly development construction companies out there who want to be seen to be doing the right thing, and so we'll be using those in videos to have the industry talking to industry. That's the best way to get the message across there. Not just have some other expert telling them what to do. Someone who's in that industry, who sees the benefit to the image of their business and the efficiency of the business. They've got to go and keep fixing things. That costs them money anyhow. So we start that in November, and that rolls through to the middle of next year, as well as a lot of engagement with schools and young people. So that's my presentation. Just a bit of a setting about what we're up to with water in our region, and it's a fun area to work in. There's a lot to be done at different scales. I guess we're trying to retain sustainable water supply for our region, and to have healthy waterways that everyone can enjoy. We have over 200 water watchers are out there every year, and some of you may be water watchers, I'm not sure, testing water quality in our region and on on Friday we launched the annual report of that water watching efforts, which is really valuable data the community collects for us, and our Frog Watch program as well. Frogs are, this is the time for doing your frog watching. Wish it had rained a bit, make it easier. They'd be a bit
Talking
more,
about the rain.
they'd be a bit more vocal, because the frogs aren't too vocal at the moment.
Maybe a little bit
Sorry?
tomorrow, folks.
Yeah, so it might be a good day for going out and listening for frogs. But yeah, so that citizen science is really, really valuable working with us in this area. Because we can't be everywhere just doing that work. Does anybody have got time for questions?
Yeah, love to. Now, usually I start off with quite multi-barrel machine learning, if you like, to ask a set of questions, which I take on a whole bunch of issues that you've raised. Like, you spoke about contextually about urban development. I saw the platypus icon there, but I didn't heard anything about water and wildlife and integrating that sort of concept. I mean, I was on the Sally's Creek catchment group with the Seal wetlands after that, and they were greener pretty well. And just trying to get an island somewhere for habitat for the dogs and cat free.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't put everything in these.
Yeah, no, I realise that. I could go on.
I do. I mean, before coming into the water area, I worked in natural resource management, and I really do appreciate the biodiversity values of urban environments and what we can do to enhance those. We do have predating cats and things which are an issue, I mean, there are governments looking at that in other respects. It's not my area to really comment on, but I do know that we have been doing studies around the value of urban wetlands on frog habitat and not only the wetland itself, but the immediate fringing environment for frog breeding.
I was also going to say you've got the whole problem with the negative mansionisation for also Connor and Turner and apartment building, and you've got the whole issue with more and more water runoff, as you point out, and I still probably don't realise that was involved, but you know, their money was meant to be going, some of the money, instead of putting it in slum release tanks and some of those big apartment blocks, was meant to go into more wetland money, but it didn't because the approval process was too difficult for the people.
That was
builders' approach to anything that costs them money.
Can I just address that one? Just because I get the one about funding offsets and the like. At the time when it was brought up in the context of Sullivan's Creek catchment group, it didn't go anywhere. You're quite right. It's something we haven't lost sight of, though. We're still working on that idea because we are very conscious that other jurisdictions like Melbourne Water have an offsets policy. This is basically where you can't achieve your water sensitive urban design objectives on the block that you've got because of constraints. You can contribute to a fund which builds things which downstream of your development which address those water quality treatment or flow issues. And sometimes it makes sense to consolidate things into a bigger thing rather than having lots of little ones.
I'll just try and finish up.
Yeah, so that one.
I wasn't really actually getting you to answer any of those questions. I was just going to make a series of statements about that. And that the builders whose only regard in terms of anything, always parking, bulldozing trees, whatever, it's only got to do with how much money they can make or it costs them. And this has been our collective experience with them. But now, at the end, I discovered there's only two of you. So rather than, I didn't intend to get answers to that multi-barrel set of questions. What I was going to say is, myself and someone else just over here is building a no-mo native grassland with water tanks. And this sort of integrated veggie garden, and this sort of strategy is something I took up with the former gardens in Canberra, but they sort of came around and had a look and said, oh, it doesn't look very nice.
I'll be happy to have a look at it.
And I was going to say, I'll volunteer my garden, as I tried to back then to there. 14 years, no lawnmower.
Okay, I think somebody else wants to have a go, but I'm happy to have a chat with you after about it.
Thanks. We're interested in building a sustainable house. We're building a new house. And it's a passive house, so good electricity and energy. But we also want to do something called water harvesting. And you're aware of what
there's lots of different options for harvesting water.
Sorry? Oh, well, the one that we're using is they dig meter deep trenches throughout the garden.
Yes.
and the water from the.
So they become infiltration trenches or retention trenches. So
Yeah, so the water goes deep and works its way through the garden from underground rather than off the surface.
it's a sort of low-tech way, which is really effective.
We're a bit frustrated because building a new house, we have to have a tank, and that effectively means that you've got to put the water in the tank and then put it straight into the ground. It's frustrating. We're going to put the tank in and then take it out. It's expensive and a nuisance. Is that something, can the water policy address the possibility of having that sort of arrangement as well?
Yes. The new code, which is in place, does address that because it provides you with more flexibility about options. So you can tankers say will be in code, it's a standard. If you go in a merit path, you can say instead of a tank, I put in place this system.
So when you say merit path, does that mean we have to put in a
You put in an argument, an argument to say instead of a tank, I want to do this.
Okay.
Because
And we can
all
do
you
it
want
now,
to do
or
is to
does
achieve.
that code have to still be?
At the moment, you don't have to use a tank to achieve those detention requirements. It's just that everybody seems to use a tank. So if you talk to someone who's a water engineer in that area, they'll probably give, before you come and talk to us about the detail of it.
Is ACT government doing any studies of stagnant water in the ACT, and is that and the potential for some of the diseases that we're seeing in warmer climates coming into this region because water?
I think you have to ask. I understand, that the climate change. We've got the creep down in the north of potential carriers of disease, particularly mosquitoes, different types of mosquitoes. But I think it's something you have to ask City Health. Really, I'm not really able to answer a question about that.
A couple of questions that related on erosion control.
Yeah.
I guess first is how do you enforce, because a lot of new developments come in and they don't really do any erosion control. You can actually see just everything flowing right into the stormwater drains, like everything. And
we recognise that.
Yeah, no one seems to be enforcing it. So I guess the first question is how does that get enforced, and is there a way to increase enforcement?
There are in the Access Canberra, there are 4 inspectors that cover this.
They're useless.
And I can't really comment on that, but all I can say is we know that, I said earlier, it's a problem, that there's a lot of non-compliance.
Yeah.
Educating the community about what's good practice is one way, because you can report that, non-compliance in areas and reinforce the message as an issue. Developments over a certain size have to put in an erosion sediment control management plan, but it's a lot of the problem we find is the smaller individual developments, often which might be individual development, it might have 4 or 5 of them in one area, but they're all separate DAs, and so the net effect is you've got a large development. And so I guess we make noises about the need for better compliance and enforcement. I have to say that. We're an advocate for water quality inside government and not afraid to say that. And also we're trying to work with the Master Builders Association and the industry to try and do what we can to improve practice. Bit of shame, we're bringing down someone from Sydney on the 1st of November to do an audit across industry, across different sizes of development. He's very familiar with what's happened in other parts of Australia, so provide more evidence about benchmarking, what's the best practice we should be applying in this part of the world. So he's going to provide advice about that. We're going to run internal workshops with the enforcers around that. So we're trying to do what we can to move the issue along and improve it.
Yeah, so, okay, on the other, that's the stick.
Yeah.
I was also gonna look at the carrot, because I live on a block that's like this, and including the nature strip. And in a way, you don't get a feel of what you should be doing to, I mean, I think I'm doing the best I can to make sure that, to reduce erosion on the site, but I'm not quite sure everything I'm doing is right. I don't quite know where to go, and there doesn't seem to be a lot in the way of incentives to do it. If anything, one time I had someone from, they were doing one of those water surveys some time ago. They had us thing, and all they said about the nature strip was, you know, anything you plant in there, they can just rip away. And you think, oh, well, why should I do anything? So
it's an awkward way of putting it, because the reality is that the care of nature strips is something we rely on the lessee to do. It's not a legal requirement that you look after the nature strip, that's the public piece of land, but generally it's better if you do, because of the way it presents your own property, and we encourage people to do that. And we put in some advice on our website about nature strips, and we're happy to put more information about what you can do. The Department of Transport, Canberra City Services is producing a new guideline shortly on nature strips that it's drafted, they're just finalising it, to provide further advice. I guess we try to minimise the amount of wash-off of soil, nutrients and other from nature strips as much as we can, keeping them stable. Definitely not driving on them, parking on them, because you get compaction, you get erosion, sediment like that. So keeping cars on, there's a number of things that you can do. The steeper you slope, the more challenging that becomes, of course. But still, general principle would be to try and make that as stable as possible, and where you can, slow the water down higher up the slope.
Yeah, I guess the reason I raised it was someone I knew down the street who had done a number of things like that, and they were told they had to get rid of everything.
There are rules about how high vegetation has to be in terms of sight lines, but there is a formal process for getting approval to do work in nature strips, but 99% of people don't know.
Yeah.
We need to wind this up, so 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, Chairman.
1.
Just a couple of very brief ones. What is the water use in the ACT domestic, business and agriculture?
I might have to take that one on notice, although Icon Water probably knows the answer.
So, John put up before that the sustainable diversion limit was 40.5 gigalitres. That's a net arrangement. But no, I'm about to answer your question. So 35 gigalitres of that is potable water, so it's drinking water that's provided to the urban environment. And then the rest of it is for urban parks. Some of it's used by the NCA.
My question is, who's using how much?
Yeah, so the urban, us living in town is using 35 gigalitres out of 40.
In percent.
I think you wanted
How much
residential
residential,
distinct from
how much
commercial.
is
Yeah.
government
Yeah.
business, and how much is agriculture?
So,
That's what I was
yeah.
asking.
I would
If you can't answer.
I think
I
we'd
would
have-
suggest first of all that agriculture is extremely minor in the ACT,
Yeah.
so it's really about how we're using water as urban dwellers and how we break it up in terms of using it in the home, using it in our gardens, using it in open space.
And even the amount for commercial and business is very small compared
Yeah.
with the urban residential amount, because the number of metres in it.
But that would be.
That would, you know,
Yeah,
you're talking about,
we do have that data.
there's data about it.
The second question is, how do you measure water use efficiency? I feel, I know.
Oh, well,
that
it's
the
really,
two of us,
efficiency is about,
less than half of
Yeah.
the average one person household.
Yeah.
in Africa.
yep.
So
So,
what do you call efficient?
well, we have this was a benchmark which was at, get it right, 2003 levels, that we're now working at 40% of those levels in terms of the use of potable water. And we've been staying at that level. So, I mean, the drought was, that millennial drought, we were very much, there was a heightened sensitivity. We saw signs on the side of the road how much we're using every day. and certainly our water use went down lower again, and it's crept up a bit, but it's still staying at that sustainable level. I guess that the message is we shouldn't be complacent about water use, even so, because our community is growing and we still have to stay within those limits.
Do you want some numbers
Okay.
on that?
Yeah.
The period that John's talking about before the drought, Camerons were using 500 kilolitres per person on average. So we wouldn't be measuring you as a person, we'd be measuring everyone on average.
500 per person per year?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
now we're using 300. So we've almost, at last year, the average was 300.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So-
was 300. So, and we've sustained that since 2012.
Yeah. And the other aspect is that we,
1,000 litres.
so that's per annum, but we reduced the sort of significant magnitude down,
Yeah.
and that the community was convinced it didn't want to go back to what it was doing before the drought and set new benchmarks about how we would use water and like permanent conservation measures, all right? So that's a behaviour change that was driven by the drought and by signs on the side of the road and things. So finding need another drought or some other major issue, often that's one way of changing behaviours, but it's a drastic way. I mean,
Marcus,
so we got, is this
Yeah,
second
so,
last.
second last? Sorry, I've been going on a bit.
yeah, that's all right. Just going back to the issue about nature strips, I looked into this about a month or two ago, and it seemed as if you could only plant grass on your nature strips at the moment. And there was some talk, some consultation a year or two ago about allowing vegetable gardens and things in the nature
No,
strip.
that's it's possible to grow low-growing plants on your nature strip, but you just need to, formally I should say, as a
Need
government
to
person, put
apply
it in
to
that apply.
Yeah,
You know, grass is not something you have to apply for.
that's right.
Yeah. So it's a question of how high that vegetation is.
Yeah,
And I know I've been told on my nature strip to cut stuff down.
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm on a corner,
yeah.
and I do that. But I've got plants growing there, which help stabilise the soil.
But, I mean, there was some talk a year or two ago, I think Shane Rattenbury did a public consultation about,
Yeah, that's the guideline I was talking about.
and that's just about to come out.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
So
great.
That's good. Okay.
Neil?
And last one, sorry.
Yes, thank you. You talked about the increased density of Whelan and Turner. Let's say, and I'm particularly interested in the gross pollutant trap that's next to Barry
I
Drive.
know one.
Yes, and you know, there's 2,000 students that live directly across the road. There's going to be 40 or 50,000 people living along Northwood Avenue with a lot of high-rise near the gross pollutant trap. And you said that the green areas like Turner Parkland and Hague Park are going to be the areas in which they recreate.
Yes, the case, I guess.
So,
yeah.
At the minute that gross pollutant trap is 40 or 50 years old, as I understand it, is old technology. Is there any plans to do something better with it? They're coming, bringing in
Yes,
machinery,
well, I can say that's-
drying everything on the side and
Yeah,
letting
no,
it stick
it
for 2 months.
smells and it's not very pleasant, I
Yeah.
agree. The technology has been acknowledged, there's some improvement. I guess it's in the budget process of government, and it's in territory in Transport Canberra and City Services area that manage that, but I'm aware that it has been identified as something that will need to be addressed. They've done master planning, as you probably know, in that area of Turner, to look at the recreation, the green spaces in combination with the areas. And I'd suggest it will need improving, but I don't have the budget for it. More you can say about it, I suppose, it might help.
Well, it's going to help the lake too, which is
Oh yeah, I mean,
major.
it certainly does, and I guess in the new code, one of the things we have brought in, which we didn't have in the Act which will come in, is that we didn't have a gross pollutant target. Now you have to remove 95% of gross pollutants, which may drive some changes to gross pollutant traps in different areas as well. Centrifugal ones, which are underground, and they haven't been long on that, they're quite good, but there's a cost of how costly it is to clean them and how frequently. There's all these trade-offs in that process. But a larger centrifugal subterranean one might well be the better solution in that area than an open system like that.
We would welcome that.
But I mean, I'm not the one to decide that.
Yep.
But They are trying that technology in other places in Canberra to see how it works. And so it may, if they think it works best there, they might begin to apply it in other places. And that's all I can say really at this stage.
Okay, I'd like you to thank John for his time. And welcome now Icon Water, who also have a presentation that somehow I'll, if I can get my mouse to work, and I go to here. Yeah,
So we're just going to change the order in which we're going to speak, because it actually makes more sense for Bronwyn to talk about what we're talking about in the community.
You want to go to the one?
Marianne represent you on about the stewardship of the water cycle. So we'll start with that, and then I'll just finish off with a short presentation on our pricing submission.
It's could have been a better way to do this, but I'm
Yeah,
getting
that's
there.
right.
I'm getting there, folks.
There we go. Okay, so I don't, you probably can't read that, but the purpose of this is to show you some work that we're doing on the concept of water stewardship. And we've been talking about this with our Community Consultative Forum and what it means, what water stewardship means, particularly in the context of the urban water cycle. And I've heard a range of issues raised tonight are all around water, water in urban development, water consumption, how we split our water usage, how we can design better houses, how we can conserve water. And you're asking about where to find that information, where can I get the latest data, who can I speak to? And we've found that there's a bit of confusion in the ACT, and this is not unique to the ACT, it's across the country. People don't understand who are their water service providers, not just in the sense of providing drinking water, but also, like John's come and given a presentation to you today about what's happening in the catchment and water policy area. But there's also Transport Canberra and City Services that play a role in managing water as well. We also have the National Capital Authority here in the ACT that have a role in managing water. So we're all doing different things, and we all need to work together. And so through this Community Consultative Forum, we've decided that no one should necessarily own all of water, because we all bring different levels of expertise and efficiencies and different focus. For example, Icon Water is a territory-owned corporation. We are not government. And so our idea is that the community are the stewards of the water cycle. It's you that we need to hear from about what you want for water, because you're the ones that are buying it and you're the ones that want to live and use water the way you want to use it. So what we want to do is to start working on what it means to be a water steward, and how we can work with you to give you the information that you need so that you can start feeding that back to us and we can have two-way conversations. I think at the moment, John mentioned today about being a water-sensitive city. So there's a whole lot of literature about what that means and how you can have your say in how we become a water-sensitive city. There's also another way where we can benchmark ourselves against other cities. We could also provide you with tools on a website, and so you don't have to go, I want to find out about something to do with stormwater, who do I speak to? You might be able to go to a web portal where all you want to do is find out whatever you can about water, and that's your way in to find information about water. And it's the rest of us behind the scenes that are working together through the Senior Exec Water Group or DG's Water Group, or we're working with developers. And so this is early days of what we're working on, and we'll keep developing that through the Community Consultation Forum. We're not going to necessarily take the lead, but we're taking the lead in facilitating. We're not delivering the answers. The answers are coming from the community. So I encourage you to share that with Marianne, who's your representative on that forum. And we'll be talking to the other councils as well about this. So I'll hand over to Lisa, who's going to talk more about water pricing.
Are you the clicker, or are you the
No, you'll have to rely on the manual clicker here. You want to go right back to the beginning now? Oh.
Here's the test tape. Okay, so as you know, well, you may or may not know, so water prices are set in a 5-year cycle. We are regulated. The Independent Commission, the Independent
Competition
and Regulatory Commission, thank you, actually regulate our prices. So what happens is every 5 years we have to submit a proposal to the regulator, who then reviews what we're proposing and then approves those prices that we can on charge to customers. So this particular process is quite a complex process, and for the first time for our submission that we just put in on the 1st of July, we actually did quite a thorough engagement program with the community. So the Community Consultative Forum was set up originally for that purpose, and we've been talking for the last 18 months with the forum. Leon Arundel was your representative for those particular talks, and then Marianne's taken over for the last couple of meetings. So it's been quite a thorough process, and it's not just been with the community forum. We've actually done a lot of different surveys, focus groups, etc. over the last 18 months, which has been a really good thing for us. And so what our proposal's actually done is we spun it around. Typically, every 5 years you would just get a publication in the Canberra Times that says, here's your new prices. This time we've actually done research to say what is important to the community, what are the things about Icon Water and our products and services that you value the most. And we've flipped it round, and we're actually going to be delivering those 5 things, those 5 streams of things that are really important to you as a community, and we're focusing on that. So,
Next one.
yeah, I think I've got a couple again. Yeah.
Whoops.
So, also for the first time, what we've done is actually developed an online portal, which is actually our regulatory submission. So typically, well, our submission is several reams of paper. We have to provide all of the analysis and all of our assumptions and calculations to the regulator. Typically, that's the thing that we've published for the community. Now we've actually published an interactive 4-page website that tells you exactly what our regulatory submission is. And so we've actually provided you today, this is our overview document, but I'd really encourage you to go and have a look at our website, because we've also put a tool on there that if you actually enter the number of kilolitres that you would use in a quarter, it will actually tell you what those prices look like for the next 5 years for each year.
Can I ask a question here?
Of course.
One of the things in the pricing structure, which, I mean, from your point of view, it's all very well, you're there to make money, etc., is that you charge so much for consumption up to a point. Now what that does is that disadvantages homeowners. It's a great advantage to people who live in flats and units because they don't have a garden. If you have a garden and you've got to maintain a garden for this supposed green Canberra, you're disadvantaged immediately because your charge is double. Once you hit that figure, your charge is double just to maintain your garden.
And you make a very, very good point. And we actually did we had a lot of discussion around that point, because the interesting thing is that once you hit the second tier tariff, that actually impacts small to medium business and large residential users who like to water their gardens and that type of thing. So what we actually did with our community forums was actually ask them, what social lenses should we be putting on this? Because typically price setting comes from an economic perspective, and they're talking about economic efficiency, which actually ends up in winners and losers. Now, the 2-tier price tariff was set for drought pricing, and as we've said before tonight, the usage patterns of Canberrans has changed significantly. So 75% of our residential customers have their pricing within the first tier tariff. But having said that, there are people who have large gardens or have large families or that type of thing, and so then push up into the second tier. So we had a lot of discussion with The people that are on our community forum are Canberra Business Chamber, Clubs ACT, Property Council, several community councils, youth is represented, the aged, ACTCOS is in there, so community services. And so the types of lenses that we put over this was, we were trying to see whether or not income and usage patterns, was there any correlation there? And the interesting thing that we found was, income and usage patterns have no correlation at all. You use what you need to use to live. So the myth, so what we realised was, there was actually a myth in our thinking that if you are low income, therefore you're a low user, but that's not actually the case. There's actually a spike that goes up from about 200 to 300 kilolitres, and then it comes back down again. So it actually doesn't matter what you earn. The other social lens that we put over this was, we were trying to make sure that with whatever tariff we came up with, that we weren't disadvantaging low income. The other thing that we needed to do, because the commercial community and small to medium business were saying the second tier tariff are killing us. If I'm a small coffee shop, I can't afford to be at that second tier. So what we were trying to achieve in our pricing submission was rebalancing the two-tier tariff so that we're actually trying to capture both ends of the spectrum, making sure that we still have affordable pricing, that low income's not impacted, that small to medium business can still trade in Canberra. And so they're all the different lenses we put over it. What we actually found through our discussions was that overwhelmingly Canberrans wanted to keep the two-tier water pricing. And we were under the impression that most people probably would have wanted to get rid of the second tier and have a single tier price. So what we actually went out to the community and asked was, do you want certainty in your pricing, or do you want control over your bills? So when we say, do you want certainty, that was, do we rebalance and say, let's have a fixed portion that's much higher so that you know exactly what your bill's going to be, and so therefore the consumption tariff is quite low, it would be at marginal cost, about $1.94. Or do you want to have control over your bill, therefore leave the ratio how we currently have the lowest fixed charges in Australia, but have a two-tier tariff where the second tier is actually quite high. It's probably the fourth highest tariff across Australia. Overwhelmingly, the community said to us, we want you to keep the two-tier tariff, because I feel like, when we ask why, they're saying, well, I feel like I'm contributing, I feel like I'm being a good citizen, it helps me control my usage, and it helps me say, well, I'm being sustainable in my usage if I can keep within that first tier, but I acknowledge that if I want to do other things on my property, that's what I'm going to have to pay for it. So what we ended up doing was...
doesn't that underestimate the value to the community of having nice gardens? It's not just the owner, but everyone benefits from people having good gardens.
Absolutely.
And I'm not surprised that so many people wanted it cheaper, because as you said, 75% of them are only in tier 1 anyway. Yes. They're going to vote for that cheaper rate.
That's right.
So I'm not sure, I think you're missing those positive externalities.
So the other thing that we needed to be really, really careful of is that a lot of the larger businesses with looking at being more sustainable, doing things differently. There are a lot of people who have access to different sources of water and potentially want to go off-grid, I suppose, and that's called uneconomic bypass.
Can I ask who these large businesses are in the ACT? Because we don't have any manufacturing industry or anything like that.
But we
don't have agriculture.
No. So that terminology is an internal terminology that we use, so that's probably... but basically what it is defence have access to drawing water from Lake Burley Griffin. The NCA can put a pipe in because they predominantly just do irrigation of the Parliamentary Triangle.
If that's from Burley Griffin, that's got nothing to do with the water that we get in our normal
No,
households.
but what it will mean is that the prices will go up because it still costs X amount of money for us to maintain the system.
Yeah, charge them for the water they use from Lake Burley Griffin.
So the different.
Why should I subsidise them?
The difference is that for us to provide you with pristine water that we then treat and provide through a pipe, it actually costs us 55 cents per kilolitre to take that out of the river system. Whereas the NCA or Defence or whoever chooses to go in, put a pipe in the river, pump a pipe in the river, they only pay 22 cents
Yeah, but
per kilolitre.
Hang on, they're not using, the runoff water in the ACT doesn't go into our storage systems. Our storage systems, the rainfall that comes in the mountains, etc., has nothing to do with
It
the
goes
rainfall
in-
in the ACT,
it does.
which runs into Lake Burley.
It goes into all of our lakes and ponds, and they're able to draw water out of those, and they pay 22 cents per kilolitre to do that.
We'll charge them 55 cents.
Well, that's a good point, but that's not our decision. That's the ACT government's decision, and that was set by the National Water Commission. So
You make an interesting point though, right? When you talk about what the high water users will do, right?
Mm.
So you know how sometimes you set out to achieve something in a positive light for the right people, and you end up hurting the same people you go to help.
Yes.
This is an interesting situation because, technically speaking, the high water volume users are ignoring the fact that the price has doubled because they can pay for it in some way, right?
Yes.
Because it's high, and in another world I'm a high user, the issue fundamentally becomes you immediately go to alternate solutions,
Yes.
off-grid,
Yes.
water tank storage, solar, drive it. What it'll eventually do in a clean energy target that the ACT government's got is to run solar, to run off-grid rainwater and tanks, which will ultimately take the high users off-grid because they want to go to the 20 cents, right?
Yep.
Then you're going to make the water more expensive for
Yes.
every other low-volume user
That's it.
at the moment.
Yep.
So the strategy is self-defeating,
Yeah.
is what we're saying.
Absolutely.
I think as well it's that
Well, you're agreeing with it, so-
well, we are, and the issue around water sensitive urban design is that it's about balance. It's not one or the other. It's not off grid, or because when it doesn't rain, you're still going to need water from the storage, and so we still have to provide the infrastructure for the community, and that is actually our mandate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, your position currently in that two-tier structure will effectively take that 30% of users, push them to seek alternates,
Yeah.
which will take them off-grid just like power,
Yep.
right? And the people that will suffer are all the people, not today, right? But down the track, you will push people into off-grid solutions
Yeah.
that will bypass what you're trying to achieve. And in the end, the low-cost people who have voted to stay in a two-tier system will be the losers.
Yeah.
We do. That is a concern.
Absolutely right. And so what we're trying to do with our tariff is actually bring the two tiers closer so that we eventually get to
That's
a single
sensible.
tariff. That's what
That's
we're doing.
sensible.
So what we've done is currently the top tier tariff is $5.38.
I'll go back.
We're bringing it down to $4.95. That's going to stay stable for the next 5 years. The lower tier tariff is $2.68, and it's just going to go up slightly, just under CPI, but eventually it will start to catch up with.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, the net effect is going to be
That's exactly right.
what I've just said.
That's right.
Can I,
So,
when
sorry.
you finish there?
Yep.
There's one question after this.
No, sorry.
I'm in a great position. I'm retired. I'm a single person household. I spend about 6 months of the year in state. I'm paying $104.21 supply
Yes.
charge.
Yep.
I'm using, from the average household, I'm using $100 worth of
Yes.
water, but I'm not here to do it.
Mhm.
So in fact, my bill every quarter is 80% supply
Yep.
and maybe 10 to 20% usage. And I can see my supply charge going up, and my usage is not going to increase at all. So I'm in a third tier, you might say, which is a great big capital cost and no usage, or low usage. That's inequitable to me.
I see what you're saying, But the supply charge is about having the pipes and infrastructure available.
Understood.
So if you're a vacant block of land, you're not connected and you'll never use water, you still pay a supply charge because it's available
I
there.
understand the
and
reasoning, but also saying that every litre or every kilolitre of water I use costs me more than my neighbours,
I see,
even if I'm tier 1.
yeah.
Can I also say that your
Yeah.
charges go up, but is there any attention paid to the fact that CPI does not increase at the rate your charges increase? For example, those on lower
Wages
wages,
going up,
pensioners,
I guess.
etc.,
Mm,
they get the CPI.
mm.
And if you keep increasing it, it makes it more expensive for them to do what they were always doing.
I understand, because we contribute to the cost of living with all the other things like electricity, gas, land rates. Absolutely.
Is there any provision made for this to...
Well, the ACT government has a utilities concession.
No, they don't. The ACT government has taken away everything to do with utilities and put it into electricity. You get nothing for water now.
But it's all amalgamated, so it just comes off your
But
electricity
they
bill.
cut it in half. It was $1,200 a year, it's suddenly $600 a year, and it all goes to electricity. So anyone on a pension has lost $600 a year, but all the charges have gone up.
Yeah.
So there is, Lisa, it's good to explain why. It's not actually to subsidise or to offset electricity costs. It's actually because there's a reason why it's gone on the electricity bill, which is related to
I understand
your
that.
access to the rebate.
Yeah, but they've cut the rebate. They've cut it in half. So basically, you've lost out. Any rebate that you got, you're still spending the same amount on electricity, which has gone up, which means it's going to cost you more, but you've lost the rebate that you had on
I
water.
understand, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And but the way that I looked at it is that there's only a certain bucket of money. We all pay rates, and the government has to access a
Don't
certain
bring up
bucket of
rates.
money.
Because that's another one.
So the way,
That's the ranges.
because when I was looking into it, I'm thinking, okay, well, what's the rationale behind this? And the fact that more people can actually access it through their electricity bill means that they've only still got the same bucket of money, but
No, that's
many more
not
people.
true. That's not,
can
there
access
isn't
it.
the same bucket of money. Because what they've done, the ACT government has cut the rebate by half, from $1,200 to $600 a year.
Yep.
At the same time, electricity's gone up
Yep.
and rates have gone up.
Does
So
Icon
you
make
actually
a
finish
profit?
up losing money.
But does
doing the
Icon
same
make a
way.
profit or not?
Can I just interrupt everybody for a moment and suggest, can I suggest at the moment, and they're very valid points, but they're not actually related to Icon
Yeah, I
Water.
can't really
You're bringing in too much into the
That's what
conversation.
I'm bringing up, the fact
Yeah.
that there was a rebate for
Sure.
water.
Yep.
Sure,
That's
but can
now
I
been cut.
suggest that
So
it is
any
outside,
increase in water charges, as you've got going up progressively,
Yep.
should not really go above the CPI.
And we
okay,
haven't.
but it is outside the control of these people, that rebate and whatever.
That's
Can
right.
we,
I
can we
understand
keep, can we keep this to water, please?
I understand that.
Lisa, there was a question around water sales, water revenue,
Yes.
and whether or not we make a profit. So this slide relates to that. I don't know if you want to talk to that,
Yeah.
about how the ICRC sets our profit based on the revenue that they forecast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they actually look at demand. So there's actually a demand slide. Yeah, next one.
Is that one?
Yeah. Yeah. So they actually forecast that we would use much more water than we actually did. The actual water use is the blue line, and then the next graph. So this is what we're predicting. We're actually predicting more stability in demand, which has helped us have the ability to keep the increases to less than CPI over 5 years.
Does Icon make a profit for the government, or are we all just paying what to cover the costs?
We have to pay a dividend to the ACT government. Yes, we have to pay a dividend.
A lot of
And
the
we
actual...
borrow to pay for the ACT government's dividend.
What is that dividend?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it will be in our annual report, which is available on our website.
A lot of the consumption of water, the increase in consumption,
Yep.
would be due to the building program within the ACT. I mean, the fact that offices are being converted into units
Yeah, maybe.
or everywhere in the ACT means more people are using water.
Yep.
That is not, I mean, that should mean that your actual usage of water goes up, which means you're still making more money because you're selling more water virtually.
So some of the things that we had to consider in this regulatory period was that there's some ageing infrastructure that we have to upgrade. So our capital program is still going to be around 400 million for the 5 years, and we've got big programs like the biosolids program down at Lower Molonglo, our sewage treatment plant. We have to upgrade some of our infrastructure, particularly in the inner north and inner south, because they're coming to end of life. They've been there for a long time. But what we do when we're actually looking at our capital program is that we make sure that we get customer outcomes by balancing cost and risk, cost, risk, performance. So we don't just go, oh, we're going to do it all now. We actually look at, because our overall goal is to make sure that we're prudent and efficient with how we look after the water supply, how we maintain all our pipes, and making sure that any price increases follow CPI and are not ridiculously high.
How far ahead do you plan for these things?
Oh, we've got a 50-year plan. We go right out to 50 years, and then we have 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. Yeah.
So, I've just got a question about large consumers. Like something like Parliament House, would they still pay the $200 or $100 access fee?
Everybody pays the same. Yep.
Yeah, it's just because I was somewhat involved in the gas network pricing structure that was done a year or two ago, and they have all these different tiers and different structures depending on how much gas you consume. And they actually have a declining block tariff.
Yes.
And it almost seems like it's a value judgment as to how much you put into fixed charges, what sort of tariff structure you have. And while there's a whole lot of economic analysis you can do on it, it basically comes down to a value judgment as to what people think people should pay for different aspects and how they should pay for it for the network and usage.
So typically how our charges are split is the fixed component is paying for assets. So we're going to be paying for the new Cotter Dam for the next X amount of years. So the capital fund goes into actually paying for it, and then the community pays it off over the next few years. So that's, yep.
You mentioned it on the fixed stuff. I'm kind of interested on the sewerage side here.
Yep.
I don't know if you're going to address it at some other point. Is it each household it's $537?
Yep.
Right? And it doesn't matter how many toilets they have? Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the residential charge, yes.
Yeah, so I guess to me, I don't know if you want to call it an equity thing here, but I find it interesting, that a house with one toilet pays the same amount as one with 5 or 8 or whatever, whereas commercial, it looks like if there's more than 2, then it goes up.
They pay $500 odd for each toilet over 2.
So why the discrepancy?
Well,
the way to make mansions or whatever.
It is a good point. There are other models used in other jurisdictions. Some use it based on your water consumption as a proportion of that. But in the ACT, this is the model that we have. And we will keep working with the regulator to start looking into models that work better for our customers. We need to get the feedback from the community to start to demonstrate to the ICRC that we need to change these things. So that's why we need to have these open dialogues to start to get your feedback.
Just relating to my earlier question and this one here, Parliament House, how many supply charges do they pay for water? And how much is the figure?
So the supply charge is based on number of fixtures. So
no, not sewage, water.
Yes, supply charge is based on how many metres they have on their property. So are we talking about old Parliament House or new Parliament House?
Whatever.
So Old Parliament House has probably about half a dozen meters, so they would pay half a dozen service charges.
Okay, that's the answer, that's fine.
Yeah, because they've got a separate
yeah.
connection for the Rose Garden and then...
And then you might have someone like Defence, they might have at Harmon, they might have 1 metre, but they've got a ring main on that, which means it's a very big metre, it's a big connection, so they're immediately paying tier 2
Yes.
for anything that they use.
But they're paying supply charge of 104.
Yeah.
Which is the same place, same charge,
Yeah.
I believe.
Correct.
And once. Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd have like little meters within
Sorry?
them.
Queanbeyan, do they pay the same rates as?
Queanbeyan, we supply bulk water to them, so they're under a contract. We've got a meter at the border, and we give them X amount of water, and then they on charge to their customers at whatever they're regulated to charge.
Sorry, if we just go back to my, I mean, I don't know what to think on it yet. I saw that and went, whoa, everyone's talking about water supply. And I just see this $500 there. I mean, if anything, if you're talking about feedback, it'd be really good to find out what that is actually, you know.
For the sewer service charge?
Yeah, it's a, you know, compare with the water supply, which is 104.
Yep. So just to give you an example, so in New South Wales, particularly Sydney Water and Hunter Water, they have a different charging regime where their supply charge, particularly around water and sewer, is based on the size of the service connection. So when it comes to commercial properties, they could be paying $100,000 for their connection, or $12,000 for another type of connection, and they also have a sewer discharge factor, so they actually pay for sewer usage on top of that. So whatever amount of usage goes through your water meter, they're deemed that about 50% of that would then go back down the sewer. So they actually have they have a water consumption charge and a sewer consumption charge, as well as fixed charges.
Has anyone compared like the effectiveness of each of these?
Absolutely, that's the job of the regulator. So every 5 years, there's actually a lead up of about 18 months before the regulatory submission goes in. And they actually look at, do we need to do tariff reform? What are all the other utilities in Australia and some overseas? What are they doing? Do those models work? Should we reapply it, etc.? So they actually put out 4 discussion papers over a 12-month period and had community consultation on all of those, because they were actually exploring whether or not, from an economic perspective, we should have a single tariff that was at marginal cost, which was at $1.94, and just have a single consumption tariff. But that would then mean that the fixed charge would need to go really, really high, and then that sort of went into the affordability thing, and people would have less control. And so, yeah, so there's some interesting discussion papers and community feedback on the regulator's website about the work that they did. Yeah.
Okay, look, I'm very...
Holders there when they don't get anything out of this now.
So this was showing the analysis we did at the time, and at that time, the government hadn't announced that that's what they were doing. Yeah. But this was one of the slides that we were working through with the community forum about that whole affordability and income versus usage. So we actually split it into all different segments.
Can I just clarify something? I think I understand what was said, but I might be wrong.
Sure.
I have a friend who's got a 4-bathroom house with 2 additional toilets in his garage area.
Yep.
So a normal house with 1 toilet pays the same amount that he pays for sewerage.
Correct. There's a flat residential. If you are residential, you pay the $500 service charge.
Yes.
Sorry, in that, is the logic that you're applying fundamentally, you got a couple of people rattling around in the house that can do that mansion, they only have a toilet so many times.
Yep.
They could have 10 toilets.
That's right.
But if you go to a sporting club where you've got, 100 people there every day at lunch and all the rest of it. So the logic applies to you're trying to be fair in the sense that if someone wants to be stupid and have 20 toilets, you're still going to charge them one charge because they can't use them all at the same time.
It's highly unlikely that they would have 20 people on the same time. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Fundamentally, equity is a big
But it's
exists
not.
in the water
I get the
charges,
logic is what I'm saying.
sewerage
Yes, that's the
charges
logic.
and the rates.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, look, I'm well aware that we have a lot more business to attend to, so can we wind this up if you don't mind, please?
Sure, absolutely. I suppose our take-home message is that we've done a lot of consultation, and we know that we can't please everybody. But hand on heart, we're really proud at the fact that for the next 5 years, we've been able to make sure that your water prices will not go up any more than CPI. And that's been a really big thing. We've actually restructured our business. We've been really prudent and efficient in how we've looked at our forward planning on our capital expenditures. And we've really put a social lens over the economic theories around what the water prices should be. So I'd really encourage you to go to the Icon Water website and have a look at our prices submission. It's a really easy submission to read. We've chunked it down into little pieces, but it also allows you to delve as deep as you want to go. If you want to get all the sordid detail, you can go right through to the actual submission we put to the regulator with all of the prices and everything in the back end. Yeah, but that's... So we've handed out to you a summary. Please feel free to give us a call if you have any other questions. Happy to talk it through or whatever you need from us. But our website has a really good interactive regulatory submission.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. We really appreciate it.
And thanks for surviving it.
And happy to come back any other time that you like to talk about whatever you want.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it will be much lower possibility rate price increase than the in consumer and the small consumer will be considerably
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. That emptied the room fast. Okay. Just quickly, if you want to grab a cup of tea, do it fast.
The water's out.
The water's out, don't bother. The urn's cacked it. Okay, I only have one apology for the night, which is Leon Arundel. Any potential conflicts of interest? None that I know of. Okay, we need to review and confirm the minutes of the 2016 AGM, which have been distributed around, and the 20th of September 2017 meeting. Can I have somebody to propose we accept that?
Yeah.
Neil, yeah. Yeah. Good. I'm taking them as read and accepted. And that was simple. Thank you, folks. I have a list of some 30 odd new members over recent time. Should I go through them?
I propose that we accept them as members.
Good, and I second that. It's now done. Anybody within our catchment area is now a member. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm going to be a little bit long-winded and boring, but only a little bit. Oh,
Sorry.
you mean?
I'll be able to get in the office tomorrow.
I'm going to be only slightly long-winded and boring, and give her a chair's report. And I'll start off by saying, look, the last year's been quite interesting and somewhat of a learning experience, at least for me. Although not actually part of our year, in September 2016, we held a very successful candidates forum with around 250 people attending, and that projected us well into this year. Okay, we've looked at many development proposals from the huge Dixon and Lynham on Northbourne projects to the smaller, like the multi-unit developments in Campbell. An array of other interesting guest speakers have attended, and they're just far too numerous to mention. But I guess the highlight of our year was our winter solstice meeting, where many people attended and many of them enjoyed some mulled wine and other nibblies. I think we might do that again next winter solstice. Our biggest project has been the Coles Doma ACAT appeal, which some 6 months later we are still waiting to learn of the result. Many thanks must go to, among other people, to Jane Goffman, Miles Bogue and Amit Barke from the Downer community, Joseph Sladdick, a Dixon resident, Ron Brent, Marianne Norbury-Collis, Mike Heddiger, Jeff Davidson and Leon Arundel, who all contributed countless hours. Yes, let's... Thanks, guys. But all contributed countless hours that left them a little drained and worn out. But they rose to the occasions in a fantastic way. We semi-patiently await the outcome of the appeal, but we are not holding our collective breath on that. As part of our engagement with resident groups in the wider community, we have supported many events from example, a 2-day heritage walk around the Dixon and Downham, which was very successfully attended by quite a few people, as well as, for example, a highly successful lantern walk organised by the Lynham Community Association, which well over 500 people participated in. Looking forward, there'll be many challenges, not the least the Coles Doma saga, West Basin and the National Capital Authority proposals for, among other things, buildings virtually on the lake shore. Personally, I'll be working on the proposed community consultation project for Dixon Section 72, which you'll hear a little bit more about later. And I, with the committee, intend to inaugurate the Joan Kellett Community Services Award for college students in our area. Those that don't know of Joan, she was a long-term resident of Dixon and was involved with great passion in the Dixon Residents Group and the NCCC, as well as many other community, sporting and other groups. Joan was many things to many people, from the helpful neighbour, community advocate, a leader, a mentor, an inspirer of many. Joan will be sorely and sadly missed. My personal thanks go to my hard-working committee, who have been a pleasure to work with, but more so to you, the members, who have turned up to meetings in the depths of winter and to a lesser degree the sweltering heat of summer. I look forward to the coming year with anticipation and a touch of trepidation. Thank you. We'll move on quickly to a Treasurer's report.
All right, folks, a number of you might actually have this piece of paper. If you don't, you can come and get one. Who would like one? It's basically a summary report where the money was spent. Oh, we've got some data. So, brief and revenue read this one. Yeah, I'll better make sure I keep one for myself so I know what I'm all right, now these are not the audited reports because it has taken quite some time to establish who the auditor was and to have communication, a three-way communication between the former treasurer, myself and the auditor while I've been interstate on other business. They will be audited in due course and will all be advised. All right, briefly the summary. Now this is for the last 12 months effectively. There's the previous 3 months of the financial year which was handled by the previous treasurer, and I'm not on top of what those expenses of how they fit in yet. But broadly speaking, we spent, wait for this, we spent a total of some $27,800 in the course of the last 12 months, almost 10 days. There was, what I've done is I've broken it up in a departmental way that sort of shows you how the money was not necessarily exactly what it was spent on, but where the flow went through. Now, I put the committee members. The committee members in the last 12 months, we had a pretty heavy, as you can see, we had a $20,000 financial overhang. And if you went back a few months before that, it was quite considerably more. Now, we've been out there spending that money, and a lot of it has gone through committee members, and I want to highlight the fact that, and indeed put attention on the fact that committee members have been responsible for spending money on various things, right? And you have to go back and examine the committee meetings and notes and so forth. This breakup will change as we go through the audit. We may decide to split up what the committee actually spent the money on, like the trolley, like computer equipment, because often it was handled by committee members rather than I got a receipt from the actual business or supplier. Right? Okay. The next one, and I wanted to highlight that one because this is my own expenditure, as it were, because I volunteered to be tea lady, because until 8 months ago, there was no tea, coffee, cakes, or whatever. So I guess I put my hand up. I said we should do it, and ended up doing it. But I do want to make it really highlight the fact that that was the money spent, and people can make a judgment on whether they got value for money out of the $122 odd that really tell the money that I spent on teas and coffees. All right, the next, another major expense, of course, some 24% there, was the residents' associations. And this was monies that was put out to the O'Connor Residents Association, the Watson Residents, the Liners, down. Whoever put their hand up for money for events, and I know Rachel's speaking some of them over O'Connor, who's ever put up events, we had the Lantern Walk, we had recent Down Shops party here just last week. Whichever residents' associations has put their hand up has received basically a bucket allocation for that. And it's up to them how they and their committee spends that. We've got $1,000 odd in rent, which was either for here or over there at the Northside Community Centre. IT represents again a bunch of computer equipment, including various hardware. Marcus could tell you perhaps more about what specifically was bought there. But we have gone from having a pretty poor projector system in the old place to something a lot more. There's also been provision of computers to various office bearers who do a lot of business for the Community Council, and I can only reiterate on their own time. Now this scrappy little piece of paper, and by scrappy I mean if you compare it to Bruce's last beautiful little chart done here, this took me 6 hours of my time a day to go through all the accounts. So it does take a lot of time, and you've got people like, where's Jane? I mean, we'd be broke if we paid her 2 cents in the hour, wouldn't we, Jane? Then we've got design, signs, and it's cut off the advertising. There's basically a whole bunch of website stuff, logo stuff, other stuff. Again, they've documented in committee meetings as to who, why, and how we spent that money. Other, so that was 27% indeed, the largest proportion. And the last remaining bit, the other, is primarily insurance, combined community council money, and I have to be honest, some other $400 item, I just don't know what it is at this stage, because I can't remember my annotation and abbreviation. But we will establish with that again, this will change a little bit as we go through and work out what department we put in. On the revenue side, of course, we had our $12,861 that was from the ACT government, and about $10 worth of interest. I'd like to see more interest, but given our bank balance is going to be a lot lower in the future going forward, there probably won't be capacity to have perhaps an offset, some sort of savings account that we could have as a war trust or a pool to generate that. I don't know whether we'll have the capacity to be able to do that. So we had a net deficit of some $15,000, which represents the whole the net spend situation as we spend that much more than what our revenues were. We've also got, and I was quite pleased with this, the closing balance. You might notice that the cash in bank there's about $159. So on initial balance, I don't think that's too bad with cash flows of something. Almost $7,000.
That's right, one question. I mean,
yeah.
One would assume over the next year we're not going to operate at a deficit the same as we did last year.
It wouldn't be
as big broke.
We did that.
Well, we're not planning to. I mean, I'm not planning to. Well, I can't speak for the committee, but I think we're not planning to buy another set of this and another set of other hardware. And I think our rent's a bit cheaper. So we're certainly not planning to spend that amount of money, unless if we had a resurgence, say, in Campbell Residents Association, and let's say, we had an Ainslie residence, or even two Ainslie,
You can't pay them if you don't have the money.
Yeah, the interesting thing of Ainslie though is all those decisions to pay, like it's a bit of a shoot the messenger, all those decisions to pay that money to the various different organisations and everything else was primarily done because the ACT government wanted to strip back those payments, and that's because it was in surplus. So the balance you've got is you either put it to good work within the community organisations or face having it stripped back to the government. It was a subject of a series of formal letters between the department and the committee. So the decision was made, if they're going to analyse it and strip the funding, you're better off pouring it down into the community.
Oh, I've no argument, I just don't want to...
Oh yeah, no, but what I'm saying is, it was never spent in a way designed to put the organisation at risk. Because what happens is, effectively with the organisation, when it has no money, you just stop spending. but the bottom line is that's what it was designed to do. So it was intentional, and it actually was before his time.
That's it.
Okay, Paul, quickly.
I think Greg's
Yeah, Paul?
Two questions. You go.
Just very quickly, just check your association there. I'm pretty sure you don't need to have an audit.
No, that's not.
No, it is partly true. It is partly true. You still need to have an independent person check it. We've chosen for the moment to remain with an audit. Neil?
Yeah, sorry, this is carrying on from that.
Yeah.
Just from a practical point of view, the association's people will require an audited set of accounts that's been accepted at a general meeting. So we're going to have to do that.
Yes. Yeah. I've spoken to the people at whoever they are, whole of government services, and they're happy to wait for the report and accept that we will do it when his family gets well. Okay. All right. Can we accept your? Would you like to move that your report be accepted?
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Oh yeah, quick.
Just going back to this deficit issue. I mean, I get everything you're saying, but if you look at just the amount for the committee and signs and advertising, that's already more. That was more than what the revenue was this year. Those two items.
Yes, no, because it was carried over across 2 years.
Okay, I guess it's just not really clear to I'm pretty new. It's not really clear to me what the plan is to work within the budget and how the priorities are going to get set.
A lot of these were capital items, right, or intangibles that we're not going to re-replicate for some period of time. Designs and signs, as well as computer hardware, software. We are way under in terms of a recurrent budget. Our spending is way under what
We actually had more of a trouble actually spending our money. Like, we're actually racking our brains in committee meetings saying, what can we spend money on? Because we had this bucket of money that we had to spend, otherwise we'd lose it. So while it is big, you know, we came up with ideas of signs, you know, and banners, and oh yeah, the new projector, because our projector was, you know, 5 or 10 years old. You know, so there's quite a number of things there that we spent because we had to.
But I understand the question. I'll answer it the way your mind is analysing it, right? What happened was, the previous treasurer said over 3 successive years of accumulation of funds that rolled over from one year to the next, which ended up with that surplus of funds. Then the government stepped in and said, we're looking at removing funds that you're not spending because we weren't spending enough. So in that one period, a whole lot of capital items were purchased. The funds accumulated over 2 to 3 years. And so the response by the committee to do all the capital expenditure was a one-out exercise, and there were literally committee meetings to actually work out how to spend it, right? And then in the end, all that happened was decided that a number of capital items plus the distribution down into the local community groups was the most effective way of spending it. That's what actually happened.
And I'll come to you. Our recurrent expenditures is and can be well under
The yearly, yeah.
And I guess that's,
we're not there to waste it, you know.
Okay.
I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Also
A
not
sort of
there-
specification of what that is would be something that, as a former treasurer of a non-profit organisation, I would expect to see what is capital expenditure, what's non-capital expenditure, so you have a sense of what is the financial stability of the organisation. And so before accepting a report from an annual general meeting, that'd be something I would expect to see. And I'm not saying, I realise you come in kind of making things.
Well, this department of capitalisation has been set up in a way that I think reflects the broadband areas of where the money's been spent. Although I did want to highlight a couple of things.
Okay.
I don't think we need to accept the report today.
No, we don't.
When
Well, we can accept this interim report, and we will await the report at the next meeting, the audited report at the next meeting. Everybody happy with that?
Yes. Yep.
Good. We need to move on because I wanted to be out of here by 9:30. We have 6 minutes. It ain't gonna happen, kids, because we do have a few things to do. One of those exciting things at annual general meetings is the election of the next committee. We have, I think it's 5 formal nominations, which I'll read out to you. One is for Leon Arundel to the committee, for Greg Zweisenberg to the committee. Oh, somebody's come up with a new one. We'll have to look at that. We have Kanza Aga for secretary. We have Mike Ettinger for deputy chair. Oh, someone's nominated me for chair. When did they do that? But they have, and this one I, of being a member, hereby nominate Jeff Davidson to serve as
Just on the committee.
on the committee. Okay, so that's 3 committee members so far. So, having those being formal nominations, I'll declare those people elected. Unless somebody wants to object really quickly. No? Okay. So, that leaves us to elect a treasurer and at least 2, hang on, I've got to do my maths here, there's 3 there. We can have up to 8 committee members, so somewhere between 2 and 5 people need to put up their hand for the committee. Would anybody, first up, like to nominate somebody as treasurer? Nobody wants to know. You're happy to do it? John's carrying on. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll accept your nomination, Mike, and yeah, all right, Greg will do. Okay. Any other nominations?
Are you in there, mates?
I haven't nominated myself yet.
Are you not nominating yourself?
Well, I mean, maybe this is an appropriate time to talk about it. It seems to me over the last sort of year or so, the NCCC hasn't quite been running as effectively as it has in the past, and to some extent I've sort of questioned whether I wanted to remain on the committee and be part of an organisation which is purported to, you know, represent the views of the inner north, when to some extent we haven't been able to do that probably as effectively as we have previously. So I mean, part of that problem, I guess, was because we didn't have a secretary for the last 6 months, and so a lot of things took a long time to get through. But like, for example, I've done some work on a transport position paper that sort of sat with Dennis for a number of months and, you know, hasn't quite got sent out to the membership. And so I'm just sort of questioning whether it's, you know, worth my time continuing to work, you know, and do this work if it ends up sort of getting bogged down and doesn't actually get out and is it as effective as it could be.
Is that a second paper to the first paper?
Yeah, it's a slight amendment. I mean, we did discuss a transport position paper, and that got circulated and agreed at a general meeting, and there was some amendments that came out as a result of some developments over the past year, and that needed to get sent out again to the membership. But, you know, I think I sent about 5 emails to Dennis about that, and, you know, and ended up sort of not getting sent out, and it still hasn't been sent out, and I'm just. And I understand, you know, everyone is a volunteer here, and so.
So we take what you're saying, Marcus, in relation to volunteering, is yes, this is an issue. I do often wonder whether it's almost time for the ACT government to consider actually changing from community council model to the municipal council model. Even though so many of them end up putting an administrator in because the various corruption charges against various people, and it always is in the New South Wales jurisdiction. There's always one municipal council that's under administrator, but just the same, I think it falls very heavily on volunteers, and I do think that you're quite right that I do not think this has been a particularly good year in terms of the effectiveness and efficiency. I do not think we budget properly. There's a whole heap of things, and I think that also that the work falls very disproportionately on certain members, which is one of the reasons why I'm not nominating. I'm the president of the Residents Association. That's enough for me, considering if this is going to continue the way forward as it has done.
It's an interesting comment because I remember joining a few years ago when it was a bit of a job for the boys and a few checks going out to relevantly interested parties. But so when you talk about not well run, I can honestly say that when I joined it was run like crap. But having said that, do you think it's the time for change? Because say for example, the inner south runs with the elected members being a member from each community group as the elected officials going forward in the structure. That's how they do it. But they actually also, they charge membership, they raise money independently. The thing is, if you think it can be more effective, then do you think you want it, what do you see, Mary? Do you see a structural change to get effectiveness so that it's actually more representative of the local community groups, or do you have a thought on that?
I certainly think that the model that the Inner South uses seems to be quite an effective model, possibly more effective than what is happening here. And I think that from what I hear, and maybe anecdotal, that the government is actually looking at that as the preferred model for future areas that might be putting forward the sufficient.
Because that's a more structured model.
It is a structural model, but there's also then the fact that basically, I think we're all very aware that people are busy. A younger demographic, which I know our Chief Minister keeps on being very concerned about, that they have other things to do, that the whole notion of voluntary effort is somewhat less than it used to be in the community, particularly within certain areas of demographic structure. So I think it's not quite a wicked problem, but it's a difficult problem to try and work out how you get better engagement. I do not think that we're particularly effective at engagement, apart from the rule-proving solstice evening, which was a great success. I do not think that we are effective at publicising our meetings. I think the one big bonus is being able to generate what Marcus does, which does mean that at least if somebody is interested, can't get here because of whatever other commitments they may have, they can actually download it on YouTube and see it that way.
Yeah.
But again, you know, and that was a wonderful initiative.
Because
But I do think basically it's a structural model, and we do have to, like every other community organisation, struggle against the odds. They're there, we all know about them, they're not new. They confront everybody in this sector.
Because I remember there was look, we had a really effective time in and around just after the saving of the Dixon trees. I remember that. The issue there was an incredibly effective model. Ministers were engaged. We were inundated with potential speakers who wanted to speak. The audience participation was excellent. And then unfortunately we got into a debate in relation to the government on a couple of issues, in particular a person, and then it all fell apart. So the thing is, now's an AGM, we're all here. Who are here from the relative, different community groups? Because would you be prepared to form a committee? Yeah, would you guys be prepared to form a committee based on that model, that you're representative of each of those groups, like whether the head of it or whatever? Because that's what you're really saying if you want to be more effective.
Could I just make some comments? Because I'm involved with a number of organisations. It seems to me, and this is a common problem right across the ACT at the moment, right across a wide span of community organisations, and I think it's a number of things. I think that people get tired because it's the same. I see the same faces that I've seen from the time I came in. Just speaking for Campbell, we had a neighbourhood watch that struggled on really with only half a dozen people, you know, carrying it on until they decided to finish. That's happening all over the place. But I'd just like to issue a word of caution here. In some of the organisations that I'm with, it is very obvious that consumer participation is not welcome by governments. And I know we have a government person here, but it seems to be a pattern at the moment that about eight years ago, governments couldn't do anything without consumer consultation. And yet I'm watching people drop like flies off committees or committees being disbanded, and there is no voice there. There is no consumer voice there, whether they're wanted or not going to government. And I just think it's really important, no matter how much of a struggle it is, I really think it's really important to keep struggling. And I also believe that will turn around. Part of it is that we're losing a lot of losing a lot of social community participation over the last couple of years, right across the whole spectrum.
Yep.
And that's basically the problem. You know, because years ago people wanted to be involved in their community. Now not so.
Could I make a suggestion there, please? What you just said, if you were able to make an email and put that into the Canberra Times, that would be great. That probably represents all the community councils. You'd say better than I think. Yeah, we're losing members because of all the reasons you're talking about.
Oh yes, I can
So
do
if
that.
you could draft something up and maybe
Send it off to the Canberra Times.
So you don't have to go through the
You can add a few more comments.
Okay, I might talk to a reporter on that.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Because the
I'll see what I
government
can do.
they keep coming to us about, you know, we want your views on this, we want your views on that, we want your views on that. And so, look, we're not working for you, we're not getting paid, we don't have the time.
And there are overheads and people, that's part of the problem. People have to be prepared to carry their own overheads too. Even just in petrol and.
Yeah, I pay the community members basically when it comes, not only loss of income and opportunities.
I think you need to draft
Okay, well, look,
and maybe send it to a few of us and we can top it up.
just excuse me for a moment.
I think the principle of having representatives from the various residents associations on this committee is a good one.
Yeah, because the thing is, I think there's a number of people, self-included, would happily step aside if that's the structure. The only reason we're part of it is not to try and get things done. But the reality becomes that I know for a fact how effective it was until we got derailed about a year ago. But anyway, the bottom line...
Can I just say, I don't see any reason for anyone to step aside.
The people that need to step aside are the ones that are...
expand the committee.
Oh, you mean like add the community?
Yes,
right.
yes, so that you're not saying, well, we've got 5 really good people here, but in order to take these new people in, we've got to lose those 5. I would say just expand the committee so that you've got the people who are active that remain.
Excuse me for a moment, that is great and I like the idea, but we will have to look at our constitution and see how we can do that. In the meantime, I would like to finish off. Would anybody else like to stand for the committee, or are we going to be very short?
Marcus, did you decide?
I'll think about it. I'll see how I go. I won't at the moment, but yeah, we can change things in the future if necessary.
We shall, at the moment, soldier on with the very small number of people we have.
Is that actually constitutional? I'm trying to remember. If you need a quorum, what's the quorum under the Constitution?
Four people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We have 4 people, as long as we all turn up.
That's all right. I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it is going to be difficult, but anyway, okay.
Just a
quick
question. How do you want to treat the views put forward in relation to the community groups? Does someone want to move that be put forward into something meaningful?
I was about to say, can we actually come back to this in general business very quickly?
Sure.
Look, it's 20 to 10, so I want to get the next one, which is a formation of a working group for Section 72 Dixon. We've had discussions with a number of people, and it has been proposed that we establish a working group to work with Canberra seniors, Council on the Ageing and others on Dixon 72. So I'm proposing that we form a working group that the committee will organise. Anybody want to ask questions or whatever?
Well,
go on.
I mean, I think about 6 months ago we formed a working group for Section 72.
No, we didn't actually ever form a working group. We talked about forming a working group. We never actually...
In the Constitution it says there has to be written instructions to a working group. And that was never done.
And it never happened.
So what would be our written instructions to the working group?
What I'm about to suggest is that the committee be charged with establishing at their next meeting written instructions to the working group, and it be formed, that from there it will be formed and established. But I need to flag it here at this AGM that that is what we are proposing to do. We could all say, no, let's just forget it, which would be a great idea in one way, except we do have a meeting with the planning people tomorrow about it, as it happens.
Well, to me, if you're going to establish a working group, you've got to actually say what they're working towards.
Yes.
And to sort of make a decision to say someone else will make a decision, which is the committee, I don't think it's really a decision. Like, because, I mean, the committee could decide anything.
Yeah, but isn't that just a curiosity question? What are you trying to say, Dennis? The reality is this. It's an AGM.
Yes.
There's a new committee going forward. So realistically speaking, you're going to have the business of the new committee. So what is it you're trying to get out of this?
We're charging the committee with the responsibility of doing that.
Yeah, but don't you do that at the next committee meeting? Because you got
Yeah, okay.
only a few members going through, and some people might not even want to deal with it. So is that part of the next meeting? I would have thought, or not?
I'll take that on board and just say, look, let's leave it to the committee and not worry about it tonight because I want to get out of here. Okay. Yes, Jeff.
We have some previous committee members not rejoining, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yes.
We need to say thank you very much for the
Good
work
point.
you've done.
Thank you. I was about to get there.
Okay.
I did skip it by mistake, but thank you.
Depending on which way he jumps.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to continue doing the recording things, obviously, but yeah.
Okay. So back to the general business quickly of ideas and thinking on how we form ourselves. There are constitutional issues that we will have to look at because I don't think the Constitution actually allows that, so we may have to have a special general meeting to do that if that's what's suggested. But has anybody got any other brilliant thoughts on the sorts of things?
My thought, you saw the instant reaction by some of the people desirous of it, then you would actually benefit and get more people along to the next general meeting if you made that the topic of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reality is then you get all the you invite all the committee heads of all the different, you know, interest groups to be part of that discussion, and you'd have at least a decent conversation at the next general meeting.
Mm-hmm. It's a reasonable suggestion. Anybody else?
Can I just make one comment about that? I attend the South Canberra Community Council quite regularly, and I think their structure does work very well. They also do have very strong residents groups and associations that feed into that though. So I think if there are suburbs or areas in the inner north that don't have strong residents groups that are going to feed in, you might just want to make that part of your thinking about how those groups will be represented in the new structure. So I don't often see people here representing Ainsley, for example, or Hackett.
Hackett, yes, exists, but...
So yeah, I mean that's just because I know that Forest, for example, had to establish a residents association in order to have its views considered by Inner South Community Council. So, which they did, but the Inner South Community Council basically said, oh, we can't consider issues around Forest because they don't have a residents group to be part of this association. So you might want to think about whether you do that a bit differently to the way that you do.
Well, the bit different comes into what I think someone was saying before about having a blended committee where you've got individuals and then you've got representatives, and that actually gives you a stronger position because that, yeah, I mean, at the end of that would be part of the discussion into the next meeting about what that would look like, and that makes sense, you know, because then you get invested people.
Bribe them, that's the thing. Each residents group that puts someone onto the committee gets an allocation from the interest.
Does anyone have any other general business of any sort?
I'd just like to make a comment that
Yeah.
I was driving past the AFL Field on Limestone Avenue, and it's removed its advertising facing out into Limestone after some people put a submission into the ACT government review on signage. So I for one cheered when I saw that.
That was largely due to me on
Probably.
Okay, on that note, I shall wind up this meeting. Thank you one and all for your attendance.